I never thought getting lost in the woods could turn into one of the most unexpectedly intimate nights of my life, but here we are. So picture this. It's late afternoon, the sun's dipping low behind these massive fir trees, and I'm realizing we have zero idea where the trail went. And by we, I mean me and Jamie, the guy I'd just started seeing, who seemed way more outdoorsy than me but somehow agreed to this hike anyway. We'd met a few weeks earlier at this little indie bookstore downtown. He was lingering in the travel section, and I was pretending to know what I was looking for. There was this instant vibe, like a spark you don't plan but can't ignore. Eventually, he suggested we do something active together, which I took as a polite way of saying, "Come get some fresh air," and awkwardly try not to embarrass yourself. I wasn't super outdoorsy, but I wasn't about to back out, so we decided on this trail that supposedly had killer views but was easy enough for beginners. Easy, it turns out, was relative. We started off fine, chatting about everything from favorite movies to our most embarrassing childhood moments. Turns out Jamie is a master storyteller, and I was hooked. The trail was beautiful, thick green all around, the smell of pine hanging heavy, the crunch of leaves beneath our boots. I was mostly keeping pace, trying not to look like I was gasping for air every 5 minutes. Jamie was doing that amusing thing where he's ahead, then turns back to check on me with this grin that somehow made me want to keep going, even when I was ready to quit. But then, somewhere along the way, things got weird. The trail markers disappeared. We passed the same twisted route twice. The sun started slipping faster than I expected, and then the temperature dropped noticeably. Jamie pulled out his phone to check GPS. No signal. That's when a quiet panic started creeping in. "Are we lost?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even though my stomach was doing flips. Jamie let out a breath, the kind you blow when you're trying to stay calm but might be freaking out a little inside. "Looks like it. We must have taken a wrong turn at the last fork." Great, just great. We decided to backtrack, but the forest all started to look the same. Shadows stretched long and menacing. Our footsteps echoed oddly in the thickening silence. The temperature kept dropping, and I could feel the chill starting to creep into my bones. Jamie, ever the optimist, tried to joke about it, but I could tell he was tense too. After what felt like hours but was probably closer to 40 minutes, the sun was almost gone, and we both agreed that trying to find the way back in the dark was a terrible idea. "We should set up for the night," Jamie said quietly. I looked around. No tents, no shelters, just us and a patch of rocky ground. And that's when the reality hit. We were stuck here, probably for several hours until dawn. I couldn't stop thinking about how cold it was getting, how quickly the temperature was dropping. I'd foolishly left my jacket in the car, and Jamie's was thin. We both shivered. And then, almost on a dare, Jamie suggested something that sounded insane, but maybe was the only way to keep from freezing. "We could share body heat," he said, half smiling but with this serious glint in his eyes that made everything feel different. I stared at him, thinking about how close we already were, and how much closer we were about to get. And just like that, getting lost in the woods wasn't just about cold or fear anymore. It was about something I wasn't expecting at all. But before I tell you how that night unfolded, I should probably rewind a little and explain what led us here. Because sometimes the best stories start with getting completely, utterly lost. Sharing body heat. I mean, I knew what that meant in theory, but in practice, especially with Jamie, the guy the first was still figuring out how to really talk to, it felt like stepping into some kind of awkward, high-stakes game. There was a weird pause, like the forest itself had leaned in just to see how I'd respond. "Wait, you're serious?" I asked, half laughing, hoping to diffuse the moment. Jamie shrugged, but there was this calm kind of certainty in his eyes that made me pause. "Yeah, I'm serious. It's cold, and we don't have much else going for us. Plus, it's not like we're strangers. We've hung out a bunch. I'm not going to just leave you freezing out here." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about survival, it was about trust. Me trusting him not to think I was some weirdo for suggesting something so intimate in such a raw moment. Him trusting me the same way. So, yeah, we did it. We shuffled closer, awkward at first, like two guys suddenly on an invisible tightrope, trying to find the right way to sit without stepping on each other's toes, or feelings. Jamie pulled his jacket off, and I did the same, realizing we'd both been underdressed for this time of night. The cold wasn't just a bite anymore. It was a full-on punch to my ribs. I remember when our legs finally touched, and it was this weird mix of comfort and hyper-awareness. Like, suddenly I was aware of the warmth radiating from him, the slight smell of his cologne mixed with that fresh pine scent from earlier. It was unexpectedly grounding. "Okay, this is weird," I blurted out, trying to break the tension. Jamie laughed softly, this warm, genuine sound that made my chest tighten. "Yeah, it's definitely not how I imagined our first overnight hike going. We found a spot behind a large rock to shield us from the wind." I can't tell you how many thoughts were running through my head. Mostly, don't mess this up, and why does him being this close feel so normal? The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was like the quiet that exists between two people who don't need to fill every second with words. Instead, we just sat there, pressed close enough that the cold felt like a distant memory. Eventually, Jamie shifted a little and looked over at me. "You okay?" I nodded, but honestly, I was a little overwhelmed, not just by the cold or the situation, but by how easy it felt to be near him. The way his eyes held this softness that made me want to confess all the little things I'd been holding back. "I'm fine," I said, just surprised. I didn't think I'd ever do something like this. "Me neither," Jamie admitted. "But sometimes you just have to roll with it," and that's when it hit me. This ridiculous, unexpected situation had somehow broken down all the walls I usually kept up around people. Here we were, lost in the woods, cold and a little scared, and instead of freaking out, we found this quiet connection. I found myself wanting to reach out, to see if he wanted more than just body heat. So I did. Slowly, I shifted closer, and before I knew it, our shoulders were touching, then our arms. It was subtle but electric, like the first real spark of something that had been simmering under the surface all along. Jamie caught my hand without hesitation. "Hey," he whispered like we were sharing a secret. "Hey," I breathed back, feeling like the world had shrunk down to just the two of us and the quiet rustling of the trees. Time became weird after that. The dark deepening, the temperature dropping a little more, but none of that mattered because suddenly, all I could think about was how safe and warm I felt right there, wrapped up with Jamie in the middle of nowhere. Eventually, would we find our way back? Would this moment change everything between us? Honestly, I felt like I didn't care. I just wanted to hold on to this feeling a little longer. At some point, Jamie shifted again, his voice low and steady. "You know, if we get out of this without frostbite, I'm officially naming this the weirdest date ever." I chuckled, squeezing his hand. "Definitely earned some kind of badge for surviving this." We laughed softly, the sound blending with the forest around us, and I realized something I hadn't admitted out loud yet. This night, lost and freezing on a rocky patch in the woods, was becoming one of the most memorable and strangely perfect experiences I'd ever had. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see what came next. Morning came slow and cold, like a reluctant guest dragging its feet before finally showing up. At first, all I noticed was the stubborn chill lingering in my bones, a reminder that last night wasn't some weird dream. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw Jamie's face just inches from mine. Eyes closed, breaths shallow in the early light filtering through the trees. I tried not to move much, afraid to break the fragile peace that had settled between us. But the cold was relentless. It crept back in as the sun struggled to warm the forest floor. I shifted slightly, and Jamie stirred, blinking open his eyes with that familiar sleepy grin. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning," I said back, voice rough from the cold, and maybe a little from nerves. We stayed like that for a few minutes, just sharing warmth and quiet, neither of us rushing to get up or break the moment. Honestly, it felt like the forest had wrapped us in a bubble where nothing else mattered but the two of us and the gentle rustling of leaves. Eventually, practicality kicked in. We needed to figure out how to get back before the day got away from us. Or, worse, before the cold got worse. Jamie pulled out his phone again, holding it up with hopeful fingers. No luck. Still no signal. "We probably should have packed some better gear," I joked lamely, trying to lighten the mood. Jamie laughed, but it was that same nervous laugh from the night before. "Yeah, rookie move. We stood up slowly, stretching out the stiffness that had set in overnight. As we started walking, our footsteps crunching on the dry leaves, I realized I wasn't just walking through the woods. I was walking beside someone I actually wanted to be with, someone who'd been there through this mess with me. The trail was still invisible, but we remembered some landmarks from yesterday. The gnarly old tree with branches like twisted fingers, the moss-covered rock shaped like a slumped giant. Slowly, we pieced together the path, like solving a puzzle with no picture on the box. At one point, Jamie stopped and pointed. "Remember that stream we crossed? I think if we head downstream, it leads back to the main trail." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. We followed the sound of rushing water, and after a while my phone buzzed with a weak signal. The relief was immediate and loud in my chest. "Got it," Jamie exclaimed, pulling up the map. "We're only about a mile from the parking lot." I grinned, feeling like we'd just won some small victory. Never thought I'd be happy to hear the words miles and parking lot together. We picked up the pace, the forest gradually thinning as we neared the edge of the trail. Sunlight streamed through the canopy in golden beams, and I realized how hungry and tired I was. "First stop, food," I said, more to myself than Jamie. He laughed, bumping his shoulder against mine. "Agreed. And maybe a hot shower." When we finally stumbled out of the woods, blinking at the brightness of the parking lot, it felt like stepping into a different world. A world where getting lost meant something more than just being off course. Jamie turned to me, eyes shining with that mix of relief and something softer. "So, what do you think? Is this the most memorable hike you've ever been on?" I smiled, the memory of the night wrapping around me like a warm blanket. "Definitely. And honestly, I don't think I'd want to do it with anyone else." He grinned, stepping closer, and for a moment we just stood there, the world rushing back in around us, but somehow feeling a little smaller, a little more ours. As we walked toward my car, I thought about how a night lost in the cold had led me to something I didn't even know I was looking for, a connection that wasn't just about proximity, but about trust, vulnerability, and maybe, just maybe, the start of something real. And yeah, we got lost, but maybe that was exactly what we needed to find. I wasn't expecting things to get quiet on the walk back to the car, but somehow, words felt unnecessary. We fell into an easy rhythm, our footsteps matching, the tension from the night before gradually melting away with every step out of the woods. The air felt cleaner, fresher, like nature was apologizing for the rough night. Jamie glanced over at me with that half smile again, the one that made me want to stop walking and just stare. "So, about last night," I chuckled, a little nervous, but mostly relieved that he was bringing it up first. "Yeah? What about it?" He shrugged, but his eyes held something honest. "I wasn't sure how you'd react when I suggested sharing body heat. I mean, I guess it's not exactly a normal first date move." "Normal's overrated," I said, surprised at how quickly that came out. "Besides, it kind of worked, didn't it?" He laughed softly. "Yeah, it did. Honestly, I kind of liked being that close. Felt safe." "Me too," I admitted, surprising even myself. I wasn't the guy who got sentimental about moments like that, but there was something about the way Jamie said it that made it easy to open up. We walked a little further, then Jamie stopped and pulled a crumpled granola bar from his pocket. Emergency snack, in case things went south. I grinned, accepting the offering. "You came prepared. Never underestimate the power of granola," he said with mock seriousness. It was moments like that, small, silly, real, that made me realize I wanted more than just this shared survival story. I wanted to know all the little things about Jamie, the ones he didn't say out loud. We got to the car, and as Jamie unlocked it, I hesitated. The moment felt charged, like the woods had given us a second chance to rewrite the script. "Hey," I said, stepping closer. "Thanks for being you. For last night, for today." He caught my hand again, that same warm grip from the night before. "Yeah, no matter how lost we got, I'm glad I was with you." I blinked, heart doing that stupid, hopeful flutter. "Me too." The breeze picked up, and I realized I didn't want this to end. So on a whim, I asked, "Want to grab breakfast? Somewhere warm, with actual chairs and coffee?" Jamie's smile was all the answer I needed. "Absolutely." We drove into town, the car filled with this quiet energy, like a secret that was both ours and waiting to be shared. At the cafe, over steaming cups and buttery toast, we talked about everything and nothing. The night in the woods became this funny, surreal memory, but also a kind of starting point. I found myself leaning in, drawn by the way Jamie's eyes lit up when he talked about his dreams, the way his laugh filled the space between us. Later, when we walked out into the bright morning sun, I knew this wasn't just some crazy adventure. It was the beginning of something real. And maybe, just maybe, getting lost was the best thing that ever happened to me. After breakfast, we strolled around the small town near the trailhead, the kind of place where everyone seems to know each other, and the air smells like freshly brewed coffee mixed with pine from the surrounding woods. It felt comfortable, like a reset button after all the chaos of the night before. Jamie kept stealing these glances at me, the kind that made me nervous and excited all at once. I wondered if he was thinking the same things I was, about how the night had broken down all these walls I usually kept up, how the awkwardness between us had melted into something surprisingly sweet. We found a little park bench overlooking the river, and Jamie sat down, patting the spot next to him. I took the invitation, and for a while, we just watched the water flow by, the current steady and calming. So, Jamie started, breaking the comfortable silence. What made you decide to actually come on that hike with me? I mean, you're not exactly the outdoorsy type. I laughed, running a hand through my hair, suddenly self-conscious. Honestly, part of me wanted to prove I could keep up. But mostly, I just wanted to spend time with you. I figured if you could handle the woods, maybe you could handle me too. He smiled, really smiled, and it felt like the kind of warmth that runs deeper than skin. I'm glad you did. I don't think I could have survived last night without you. His words hit me in a way I didn't expect. There was something about admitting vulnerability that made everything feel real. I looked down at my hands, then back up at him. Same here. I think getting lost was a blessing in disguise. Jamie nodded. Yeah, it forced us to slow down, to really be present, not just with the woods, but with each other. There was a pause, and then he leaned in just a little, eyes searching mine. Can I ask you something? Anything. He hesitated, then said, Would you want to do this again? Maybe something less adventurous? I grinned. Absolutely. Maybe next time, with a map and cell service? He laughed. Deal. The day stretched on, and we wandered through the town, stopping at a quirky little record store where Jamie nerded out over vinyls while I pretended not to be totally impressed. We grabbed ice cream, sat on the curb, and talked about everything from music to our awkward first kisses. There was this ease between us that felt new but familiar, like finding a favorite song you didn't know you were missing. As the afternoon sun started to dip, I realized I didn't want the day to end, but eventually, reality crept back in. Jobs, responsibilities, the outside world waiting for both of us. Jamie turned to me, his expression soft but serious. I'm really glad we got lost, even if it was terrifying. I feel like it brought us somewhere we needed to be. I nodded, feeling my throat tighten a bit. Yeah, it's weird how something so stressful turned into something so right. He reached out, brushing a stray leaf from my hair. So what now? I smiled, feeling a surge of hope. Now? I think we see where this goes. No maps, no plans, just us. Jamie's grin was infectious. Sounds perfect. As we said our goodbyes, there was this unspoken promise hanging between us. A promise that whatever came next, we'd face it together, lost or found. And honestly, I couldn't wait. After we said goodbye that day, I kept replaying everything in my head. The way Jamie's hand had brushed against mine, how easily we'd fallen into conversation, how the whole getting lost ordeal felt like a weird, imperfect beginning to something unexpectedly good. I'd never been the type to jump into things fast, but with Jamie, it felt different. Less scary. The next few days were a blur of texts and late-night calls. We swapped playlists, shared dumb memes, and compared notes on our favorite hiking spots. Jamie already plotting our next, less lost adventure. It was nice getting to know him outside the chaos of the woods, but part of me missed that raw, unfiltered connection we'd found when we were literally stuck in the cold. One evening, a few days after the hike, Jamie invited me over to his place. I wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe just a casual hangout, maybe something more. When I got there, the door swung open and his smile hit me like a warm wave. "Come in, finally," he said, stepping aside to let me in. His apartment was cozy, with plants in every corner and a smattering of vinyl records lining the shelves. It felt like a reflection of him, warm, thoughtful, a little eclectic. We settled on the couch, and Jamie pulled out a small photo album. "I thought you might like this," he said, flipping it open. "It's pictures from all the hikes I've done over the years." I leaned in, scanning the pages filled with mountains, forests, and trails I'd only dreamed of. But what caught my eye were the candid shots. Jamie laughing with friends, sitting by campfires, looking completely at ease in the wild. "Wow, you really love this stuff," I said. He shrugged, eyes lighting up. "Yeah, it's my happy place. And now, I guess, it's our happy place." I caught myself smiling, the way his words wrapped around me like a soft blanket. We talked late into the night, sharing stories about our childhoods, our fears, the things that kept us up at night. There was a vulnerability there I hadn't felt in a long time, a trust building brick by brick. At one point, Jamie paused, looking at me thoughtfully. "You know, I never thought I'd feel this close to someone so quickly. But with you, it's different." My heart skipped. "Same here." Without really planning it, our hands found each other again, fingers intertwining like puzzle pieces, finally fitting together. The air between us shifted, charged but gentle. He leaned in, brushing his lips against mine in a kiss that was soft, patient, and full of promise. It wasn't fireworks or a movie scene. It was real, honest, exactly what I needed. When we pulled apart, Jamie smiled that goofy, endearing grin. "Guess we're pretty good at getting lost together." I laughed, feeling that familiar warmth spread through me. Yeah, maybe getting lost isn't so bad after all. That night marked the start of something new, something I was ready to explore. With Jamie, I felt like I could be myself, imperfect, uncertain, and still somehow enough. And as it turns out, sometimes the best way to find yourself is to get a little lost along the way. After that night at Jamie's place, things started to settle into this comfortable, easy rhythm between us. We weren't rushing anything, but every moment felt charged with this quiet anticipation, like waiting for a song to drop, only better because it was real, not some scripted scene. One weekend, Jamie suggested we try another hike, but with a twist. This time he promised we'd stick to the trail and bring actual maps. I agreed, mostly because I wanted to see that smile when he was in his element, and also because I kind of liked the idea of going back out into the woods with him, but without the panic. We drove out early Saturday morning, the car filled with that familiar mix of excitement and caffeine. Jamie was practically bouncing in the passenger seat, map in hand, and a list of checkpoints that looked more like an expedition plan. I teased him about his professional hiker vibe, and he just grinned, eyes twinkling with that mischievous spark I was quickly falling for. The trail was gorgeous. Sunlight filtered through the trees in golden streaks, wildflowers nodding in the breeze, birds chirping like the forest had its own soundtrack. Jamie kept pointing out cool stuff. The shape of certain leaves, the sound of distant waterfalls, the way the light hit the moss on the rocks. I was mostly nodding along, pretending I knew what he was talking about, but honestly, I loved watching him get so animated. At one point, we stopped to catch our breath by a small clearing, and I leaned back against a tree, feeling the sun warm my face. Jamie plopped down beside me, pulling out a water bottle and offering me a sip. "You okay?" he asked, eyes soft but curious. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Honestly, I'm thinking about last time we got lost. Can't believe we made it through that night." Jamie laughed, the sound light and easy. "Yeah, that was insane, but also kind of perfect in a weird way." I looked at him, feeling that same warmth from before, the kind that had nothing to do with body heat and everything to do with being close to someone who made you feel seen. "Hey," I said, voice a little quieter, "I'm really glad you suggested the whole share body heat thing. I don't know if I could have handled that night without you." He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from my forehead. I felt the same. It was scary, but it also brought us closer. For a moment, we just sat there, the forest humming around us, the space between us shrinking until it disappeared. And then, like something out of a movie but somehow better because it was ours, Jamie leaned in and kissed me. Slow, deliberate, like he was trying to memorize the feeling. When we finally pulled apart, I caught my breath and grinned. "So, are we officially the lost in the woods and survived couple now?" He laughed, bumping his shoulder against mine. "Definitely. And next time, we bring snacks." Lots of snacks. We spent the rest of the hike wrapped up in an easy conversation that felt like coming home. No maps needed for that. Later, back at Jamie's apartment, we sprawled out on the couch, tired but fuzzy with the kind of contentment that comes from sharing something real. I found myself opening up about things I usually kept under lock and key. My insecurities, my dreams, the little fears that made me hesitate in life. Jamie listened, not rushing me, just holding space in a way that made me feel safe. "You don't have to have it all figured out," he said softly. "We're just two people trying to make sense of the world." Those words stuck with me like a lifeline. That night, as I lay there beside him, I realized something. Getting lost isn't just about wandering without a map. Sometimes it's about letting go of control, trusting someone enough to follow their lead, and finding your way together, even when you don't know the destination. And honestly, I couldn't wait to get a little more lost with Jamie. A few weeks after that hike, we found ourselves back at the trailhead. Not lost this time, just two guys who'd learned a little more about each other and themselves. The forest was still the same wild, sprawling place, but everything felt different, more familiar somehow, like it had become a backdrop for something that mattered. We took our time on the trail, no pressure, no maps needed beyond the ones we'd made together. At one point, Jamie stopped, looked over at me with that quiet smile, and said, "You know, I think this is the first time I've felt completely at ease on a hike." I laughed. "Is that your way of saying I'm good for you?" He grinned and bumped his shoulder against mine. "Maybe." The sun was filtering through the trees, casting patterns on the path, and in that moment, everything felt right. The awkwardness, the fear, the uncertainty. We'd left all that behind on that first night lost in the woods. What remained was trust, warmth, and a connection that didn't need words to be understood. Later, sitting on a fallen log, we shared a quiet moment. Jamie reached for my hand, and I didn't hesitate. It felt natural, the way it should. No grand declarations, just two people choosing each other in the midst of everything. As we walked back toward the parking lot, I realized something I hadn't fully admitted before. Sometimes, getting lost isn't about finding your way back. It's about discovering the people who make the journey worth it. And with Jamie by my side, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be.